Yes, thank you. I think I'm just trying to recalibrate my thoughts following the reading of that resolution. And I'm a bit overwhelmed with just gratitude knowing that really the reason that I have the privilege of even being here is I've been for my entire life supported and surrounded by strong women. Whether it's my mom, my sisters, my grandmothers, neighbors, colleagues, and I continue to be surrounded in this school district by strong women. And I'm honored to be here tonight. Something that Kelly shared that resonates with, I'm sure, all of us is the question within the quote that she closed with, what new tools might we need to develop in order to disrupt systems that don't serve all people well? Ms. Draper, like you and everybody else in our community and globally, I've been wrestling with how best to articulate my thoughts and my emotions and feelings around the violence that's taking place in the Ukraine. And I'm struck by the horror and the photos that are available to not just us as adults in our community, but our children. And continuing to be curious around how we're supporting each other and our children, knowing that's the role of education in this process. You know, things have not been easy wherever you have lived around the globe. Things have not been easy these past few years, between whether it's our global or political or public health challenges or disagreements. It's during these times, like this community, that I try to ground myself in light, in hope, and in dignity. And my intention in just addressing the community about this conversation and what Kelly shared it's not my intent to share my political views. It's just recognizing that I'm asking our PSD community to come together in solidarity to help assist and support and love on individuals who are either directly or indirectly impacted by this incredible hardship that is facing us. Some of it directly related to the war, but there's also atrocities that are happening in our backyard that deal with oppression, that deal with hate. And I think this is an opportunity for all of us to collectively to come together and reflect on our family, on love, on happiness, and realize those things don't happen by accident. They happen by extending an arm and an ear to our neighbors, to finding compassion in our hearts even when we have disagreements. And I'm really hopeful that we can do that and we extend our hearts to each other both globally and locally during this really important time. This is a really special community. I try to remind the district of how grateful I am to be here every 2 weeks, not because I think that's my job, but it's because I'm overwhelmed by gratitude. And as I talked a little bit about the atrocities that are happening in Ukraine, they're happening in a lot of different contexts. Last week I had an opportunity by special invitation of Rabbi Gorlick and our local Jewish community to attend Colorado State University's 23rd annual celebration of Holocaust Awareness Week. And not only did that event that was attended by over 2,000 people in our community shine a light on the atrocities that have happened in our past, but it also shined the light of the role that anti-Semitism plays globally today in our own community. And had an opportunity that evening to meet Mr. Ossie Slottick, who is a Holocaust survivor. And what was incredible about listening to this 86-year young man is, in spite of the atrocities that he experienced as a young person, he continued to find hope and optimism in his own survival, but also in community. Thinking about, try to reflect around how I would have reacted, how I would have been able to look inside myself, and would I have the courage to be able to find joy and happiness in spite of all of those challenges? It was great to take away his key messages, which were always have hope, always have compassion, but always do good. And if we can just focus on those simple things everywhere we go, we'll be better for it. And so not just since I heard him speak, he kind of put a little bit more wind in my sails, but I'll be honest with you, I think our entire system right now is running a marathon at a sprinter's pace, trying to instill hope and do good. And I'm really super proud of that. I think I've worn my shoes out over the last 2 weeks. I don't know if I need roller skates or skis, knowing that we got a little bit of snow on the horizon. But I just want to share a few other things that I had an opportunity to participate, because there's so many great things that are happening in this community. I wish I could talk about all of them. Friday night, I had a chance to go to the Fort Collins Museum of Discovery for the first time. I was blown away by the exhibits, but I was there under special invitation to attend the Noches en Familia at the museum evening to celebrate Children's Day. And it was a biliteracy program celebrating 13 of our local families, honoring our Latinx community, our culture through food, through learning about literacy. And the teachers who were instructing, they had me singing, they had me dancing in languages in ways that I never thought was possible. But it was incredible. It was incredible, all because this community wants to honor each other in inclusive ways. I had an opportunity today with staff to visit two of our schools, Tavelli and Putnam Elementary School. You know, Putnam Elementary School is an award-winning school. They exceed growth every year, and it's not by accident. I'm incredibly impressed by their principal and his staff, Principal Apodaca. But I had an opportunity today to go into a couple fourth grade classrooms, and they know that we're talking about literacy as our system priority. And I had a fourth grade teacher that just geeked out with me for a good 20 minutes about her literacy practices and the training. I said, what's the one thing that I can do better for you and your colleagues? And she's like, this is the training that every teacher needs to have, and this is why. And she talked about this literacy training that was taking her instructional experiences with her students to another level, and obviously collectively they're seeing results. The level of detail and specificity in which they talk about the work is outstanding. But as I was leaving the building, she ran after me. And I'm like, I don't know where the students are, but she had her coat on, she ran after me almost in the parking lot, and her name was Casey Hendrickson, and she ran after me, she says, you know, you talked a lot about literacy with our entire district the last week, with principals, with other staff members that are here. Tell us how you think we can get better. And her eagerness and hunger to continue to learn, not just from me, but with me, as I was learning from her and I'm incredibly impressed by the spirit of wanting to take this district to another level. Following going to Putnam, I had a chance to meet with Christine Hendrick and Dr. Guile and their assistant principal and many of their staff over there, and they run a tight ship. If you look at our schools across the system, Tavelli Elementary School, from beginning of this year to middle of the year, they are one of our outliers that we need to be learning from around how they're improving instructional, not just practices, but outcomes for children. And I had a chance to meet two of their teachers, Ms. Vasquez and Ms. Gomez. One is a first grade teacher and the other one's a second grade teacher. Rock stars, incredible around their specific ways of asking really probing questions to students, making sure students were doing the heavy lifting, making sure that they weren't a sage on the stage, that the children were engaged and self-directed. But what's special about both Ms. Vasquez and Ms. Gomez is they started in this district as a paraprofessional and a family liaison. And as a result of their instructional coaches who saw talent and saw value and saw opportunity to invest in them and encourage them to go back to school, because you're not just a paraprofessional, you could be potentially a future principal in this district, the way that you approach the work. They decided to believe in themselves and go back to school because somebody like I want to make sure I get their names right, Jay and Deb, who are the math and ELA coaches along with the principal, decided to invest in them. And our kids are exponentially reaping the rewards of not just what's happening on a day-to-day basis, but it's intentional leadership and systems that are being built. I had an opportunity, like many of you, as well as our mayor of Fort Collins earlier, I think it was later last week, all the days are running together, to go to several elementary schools to read books. I got introduced to Pete the Cat, coolest series of books ever. I had an opportunity at Werner Elementary School to read Sofia Valdez, Future Prez. And I got a signed copy from every first grader at Werner Elementary School. Having an opportunity to connect with our children is the greatest part of our jobs. Not my job, all of our jobs. And there are a lot of incredible things that are happening. I know we're on the verge of a spring break, and I know we desperately need it, but I think we're humming right now. And I'm really, really proud of that. And I also want to acknowledge that while we're humming, as we begin to close our schools for spring break, sometimes that's a really challenging and difficult time for many members of our community and our families. some that are dependent upon us for meals and for supports. And if any of you fall into that category, whether you are a family or an employee, I ask that you speak up and ask for supports, because we're here and we care about you. We want to make sure that we don't send you off into a space of loneliness. You know, this week, not only are we beginning to acknowledge Women's History Month, but it's also, I believe, National School Social Worker Week. And I want to acknowledge all of our system social workers who continue not only to provide the supports and the connections with members of our community, but they also help us navigate the community when sometimes it's really difficult to know how to actually access the resources that we have available. So I'm really proud of that. You know, I'll close in saying this. There's a lot of great things happening. We're a really strong district, but we're positioning ourselves to be a better district, a stronger district. And that only happens if we're courageous about not just celebrating and patting ourselves on the back and each other when we're doing well, but having the political and professional courage to interrogate our practices when we're not doing well. And tonight I'm really excited to bring to the community our second session of our district monitoring report to begin to talk a little bit more specifically around our graduation rates, how we are approaching post-secondary readiness as a system, and begin not only look at where we have strengths and where we can amplify, but where we have challenges, and begin to actually have community conversation around not how we're approaching that as a various set of schools, but as a system. And that's the tone that I want us to approach tonight's conversation, but it's going to be a great meeting and a great evening. And as always, I'm honored to be this community superintendent. And I thank you for the space to allow me to address the community this evening. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you again for those always, frankly, inspiring remarks. Thank you.